My Secretary of State made it clear that we will engage in a global effort to mobilize $100 billion in financing by 2020, if, and only if, it is part of a broader accord that I've just described.
All right, pause again. What he's saying there is, I'll give $100 billion to the third world, but we'll do it in 2020, 10 years after we're taxing you for carbon. Do you understand what that means? All right, let's go ahead now and go back to the clip.
Mitigation, transparency, financing. It's a clear formula, one that embraces the principle of common but differentiated responses and respective capabilities. And it adds up to a significant accord, one that takes us farther than we have ever gone before as an international community. I just want to say to this plenary session that we are running short on time. And at this point, the question is whether we will move forward together or split apart, whether we prefer posturing to action. I'm sure that many consider this an imperfect framework that I just described. No country will that it wants. There are those developing countries that want aid with no strings attached and no obligations with respect to transparency. They think that the most advanced nations should pay a higher price. I understand that. There are those advanced nations who think that developing countries...
Okay, that's another lie. We've got the Copenhagen Treaty. They're upset because they were told they didn't have to make cuts and the first world did, that they were going to get tax money. Now they learn they have to make cuts almost double. It's not quite double, almost double what the West has to make, and that the IMF and World Bank will be collecting all this money and keeping it for themselves, and the third world knows how corrupt those institutions are. So here he is, like he's the arbiter between the first world and the third world and the developing world. You know, he's the arbiter, when he clearly is a representative of the Anglo-American New World Order. Let's go back to him.
There are those advanced nations who think that developing countries either cannot absorb this assistance or that will not be held accountable effectively, and that the world's fastest growing emitters should bear a greater share of the burden. We know the fault lines because we've been imprisoned by them for years. These international discussions... Cheap energy has allowed humans to grow and has lifted a lot of people out of poverty. He's now saying cutting people's energy off is cutting their bondage off. Meanwhile, governments actually try to block real technological development, and in this treaty it says the UN will decide what new technologies can be funded and developed. So it's also a new dark age. Let's go back to it. Years. These international discussions have essentially taken place now for almost 2 decades. And we have very little other than an increase, acceleration of the climate change phenomenon. The time for talk is over. This is the bottom line. We can embrace this.
The time for talk is over. You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to debate. Everyone agrees the Earth is dying from CO2, but everyone doesn't agree. So if everybody agrees, why is the time for talk over? See, we have to hurry and do this right now, finishing up with Obama.
This is the bottom line. We can embrace this accord, take a substantial step forward, continue to refine it, and build upon its foundation. We can do that, and everyone who is in this room will be part of a historic endeavor, one that makes life better for our children and our grandchildren. Or we can choose delay.
There you go. Hit pause. Well, then that's just 2-year-old level psychology. You don't care about your children and grandchildren if you don't give in to this. When in truth, cutting off the fossil fuels of the third world in their own Club of Rome documents, the State Department Memorandum 200, is meant to kill people in mass by starvation, which is how Mao Zedong did it and how Stalin did it. This is a death sentence, and Obama knows full well what he's doing. That's why he's the brown face on this, hoping to sucker the third world into their own death sentence. That's why he was put in power, was to sell this. That's why he was given the Nobel Peace Prize, to sell war, that war is peace. Back to the fraud.
Falling back into the same divisions that have stood in the way of action for years. And we will be back having the same stale arguments month after month, year after year, perhaps decade after decade, all while the danger of climate change grows until it is irreversible. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no time to waste. America's made our choice. We have charted our course. We have made our commitments. We will do what we say. Now I believe it's the time for the nations and the people of the world to come together behind a common purpose.
Stop right there. That's why Obama has told the Senate and the House, I don't care if this doesn't get ratified. I'm going to implement this by command and control. Remember that on Monday from the White House? Totally unconstitutional. He's not a dictator. But that's why he said that. Obama said that because he's been given his orders. The die is set. The U.S. has to be the sacrificial lamb. China, India, Mexico, and 100-plus other third-world countries, they're not going to make any cuts. The U.S. is going to sign on to the agreement. Europe's going to sign on, and we're going to have our taxes raised to give more money to the IMF and World Bank to go buy off the third world leaders, to murder their people by starvation. Real simple. And that's what's covered in Eco-Science, written by the White House Science Czar. That's their plan. They want to get rid of people. And there's a lot of you out there that think it's the received knowledge that we've got to reduce world population and that it's the right thing to do. Well, you go ahead and kill yourselves then. Do not sit there and have a death sentence to these little African children and Latin Americans and Asians and others, and then see American standard of living dropped. There's tens of millions of Americans on subsistence right now. There's people that freeze to death every year in this country, having their power turned off. This is genocide for all of you people that have been sold on this being cutesy and cute by the corporate media. You know the corporate media is death. What are you doing being sold by this? Wake up. Stop being schmucks. Stop being fools. Stop being idiots. Let's finish up with Obama, and I'm skipping this break. We're going to Robert Wannick. Go ahead.
We are ready to get this done today.
We're ready to gut America right now.
There has to be movement on all sides to recognize that it is better for us to act than to talk. It's better for us to choose action over inaction, the future over the past.
See,
with courage and faith,
the third world knows this is going to kill millions of people a year. And people tend to hesitate before they commit mass murder.
Thank you very much.
I mean, what a load of bull. So that's my breakdown of his 10-minute, 40-second speech. And it just, I could talk for 10 hours about what he's discussing. I could spend an hour on each minute going through, showing the evidence of how it's all frauds. But why should I have to show evidence when they say the sun doesn't affect temperature on the earth? When they say penguins and polar bears can't swim and are all drowning? Or when they say the ice caps would be gone by this year 3 years ago, and they're getting bigger. Or when they say any climate change is abnormal. It's nothing but scaremongering to accept world government